Greetings, children. The first lesson from your textbook, Honeycomb. 3 questions. It is for class 7 Cbse students. First, we can start from before you read section. A king has 3 questions and he is seeking answers to them. Seeking here means searching. Answers to these 3 questions. What are the questions? Does the king get what he wants? This is what we are going to learn from the lesson 3 questions. This lesson is written by the famous literary figure in world literature, that is Leo Tolstoy, the Russian literature. Look at the first paragraph. The thought came to a certain king that he would never fail if he knew 3 things. So here the writer says about a thought. This thought came to a certain king. A certain means, look at the meaning of the word a certain. It's an idiom, which means used with the name of a person one does not know. So like that, a certain king, it could be anybody. A certain king's mind filled with a thought that he would never fail if he knew 3 things. The thought was about 3 questions, and if he knew, he would never fail in his life. Never fail in his life. As a king, he wanted to successful in his entire life. For being successful, he wanted to know the answers of these 3 questions. These 3 things were, so those 3 things were, first one, what is the right time to begin something? What is the right time to begin something? That is the first question. And the second thing was, which people should he listen to? Which people he should listen to means whom he should listen to as a king. And the third thing was, what is the most important thing for him to do? And the third question was, what is the most important thing for him to do? What are the most important thing that he should do in his life? These are the 3 questions. The king wanted to get their answers. And if he get the answers of these questions, he would never fail in his life. So why did the king want to get the answers of these 3 questions? Why did the king want to get the answers of these 3 questions? Because the king thought that he would never fail in his life if he knew the answers of these 3 things. Let us check the 3 questions. The first question is, what is the right time to begin something? And the second question is, which people should he listen to? And the third question is, what is the most important thing for him to do? So here also we are asked one question. What are the 3 questions with the king? Or what are the 3 questions the king wanted to get their answers? The king wanted to get their answers. The 3 questions are, what is the right time to begin something, and which people should he listen to, and what is the most important thing for him to do? So these are the 3 questions a certain king wanted to get their answers. Now let us move on to the next paragraph. The king therefore sent messengers throughout his kingdom, promising a large sum of money to anyone who would answer these three questions. So the king sent messengers. Messengers means the people in his court to spread this news to the entire kingdom, throughout his kingdom. Throughout means all over, all over his kingdom. His kingdom means his state, promising a large sum. Then he promised a large sum, which means he promised a reward of money bag. Money bags for anyone who would answer these three questions. If the king get a satisfied answer from anyone, the king promised a reward of money bags. Many wise men came to the king, but they all answered his questions differently. So after the messengers spread this news to the entire state, many wise men came to the court, but they all answered his questions differently. But there was no consensus in their answers. They answered it differently. Each group of wise men gave different answers for these three questions. Let us check the answers and their differences. In reply to the first question, what is the first question? What is the right time to begin something? Begin something. This is the first question. Some said, some here means the first group of wise men said, king must prepare a timetable. So the first group suggested the king he should follow a timetable and then follow it strictly. This was the first suggestion from the group of wise men. Only in this way they said, could he do everything at its proper time? Only by following a strict timetable, the king could do everything at its proper time. This was the suggestion made by the first group of wise men. Others said, others here means the second group of wise men said that it was impossible to decide in advance the right time for doing something. The second group of wise men suggested that it was not possible. They said that it was impossible or not possible to decide in advance. To decide in advance means to decide in beforehand, the right time of doing something. The king should notice all that was going on. Then they suggested that it was the duty of the king to notice all that was going on and avoid foolish pleasures. The king should avoid all the foolish pleasures and always do whatever seemed necessary at the time. And the king should do whatever seemed necessary. Seemed here means whatever looked, whatever desired at that time. So king should be alert and he should do whatever seemed necessary at that time. At others here means the third group of wise men said that the king needed a council. Council here means a group of people chosen to give advice or make rules. The king needed a council of advisors. The king needed a council of advisors or council of wise men who would help him at the proper time. And this council could help the king at a proper time. This was the suggestion from the third group of wise men. This was because one man would find it impossible to decide correctly. Then they gave the reason for this suggestion, because one man, the king alone, would find it difficult or impossible to decide correctly without help from others. Because they suggested that a king alone would find it impossible or difficult to take a right decision. So he should take an advantage of the collective decision of a council, the right time for every action. So he should follow the council's advice. This was the advice, this was the opinion by the third group of wise men. They suggested for appointing a council of wise men. This was the third suggestion. But then others said, but then others here means a fourth group of wise men said that there were some things which could be urgent, but some things are so urgent. These things could not wait for the decision of the council. And a king could not wait for the decision of the council because they are urgent matters. A king should face certain urgent matters and he could not wait for the decision of the council. In order to decide the right time for doing something, it is necessary to look into the future. So they suggested that it is essential and necessary to look into the future to take the decision, to take the right time to do something. And only magicians could do that. So the fourth team of wise men suggested that such a decision could be taken only by magicians. Who are these magicians? A magician is one who can do magics, predict the future. That is a magician. Magic can be done. A person who is able to do magic is a magician. So the fourth group of wise men suggested for appointing magicians in the court. The king therefore would have to go to magicians. So the best way to decide what is the right time to do something, the king should go to the magicians or appoint magicians in his court. This is the fourth suggestion made by these wise men. Look at the next paragraph. In their answers to the second question, some said that the people most necessary to the king were his counselors. Others said the priest. A few others chose the doctors, and yet others said that his soldiers were the most necessary. In their answers to the second question, what is the second question? The second question is, whom should the king consult with? Which people should the king consult with? Look at the second question. Which people should he listen to? Which people should he listen to? The second question. Which people should he listen to? Some said that the people most necessary to the king were his counselors. One group of wise men suggested that the king's most necessary people were the counselors. Counselors means members of the council. Members of the council. That is counselors. That is advisors. A council of advisors. A council of advisors. Others said, this is the second group, the priest. The most necessary people should the king listen to are the priest. Second group suggested. A few others, that is the third group of wise men suggested, choose the doctors. A king should consult A king should listen to the doctors, and at others, this is the fourth group of wise men suggested, said his soldiers were the most necessary. A king should listen to his soldiers. That is the most important thing. Here also you can see four different opinions from this wise men's group. In the first question also, the king got four different suggestions. Here also four different suggestions the king got. So the king was getting confused a little what to do with these people. Look at the next. To the third question, some said science, others choose fighting, and at others religious worship. So being scientific, and next is being powerful, and the third is spiritual. These three suggestions given for the third question. What was the third question? What is the most important thing for him to do? Thing for him to do. What is the most important thing for him to do? One group suggested he should follow science. A scientific temperament should be kept by the king. Others said he should be mighty. He should be in a fighting spirit. At others said religious worship, which means the king should be spiritual in nature. These are the three opinions for the third questions the king got. As the answers to his questions were so different means very different. The answers to these three questions are so different. The king was not satisfied. So the king was not satisfied with the answers of these wise men and gave no reward. So he gave no money back to these people, these wise men, because he never got any satisfactory answer, satisfactory replies from these wise men. Instead means, in the place of accepting these advices, the king decided to seek. Seek means search. The advice of a certain hermit. Who is a hermit? A person who lives alone and leads a simple life. A sannyasi. He decided to meet and take the advice of a hermit. Again, we get the idiom a certain, which means a particular hermit. Hermit here means a person who lives alone and leads a simple life, like the life of a sannyasi. He decided to go and take the advice of a hermit. Who here means the hermit. The hermit was widely known for his wisdom. He was known for his wisdom. Wisdom means brilliance. His wise. So he decided to go and take advice from a hermit. The hermit lived in a wood. Wood here means a small forest. This hermit lived in a wood, which he never left. He always lived in that wood and in that hut. He never left his house. He lived in the wood always. He saw no one but simple people. This hermit used to see only simple people, none other. And so the king put on ordinary clothes. Put on here means wear. The king put on ordinary clothes. Because this hermit never saw anyone but simple people. So the king removed all his royal attire. Royal attire. Royal attire means the king's dress and ammunitions. He removed all those things and put on. Put on means wore ordinary clothes. Before he reached the hermit's hut, the king left his horse with his bodyguard and went on alone. So, what the king did was, before he reached the hut, he left his horse. He gave the horse with his bodyguard and he went alone to the hermit's hut. As the king came near the hermit's hut, he saw the hermit digging the ground in front of his hut. When the king reached the hermit's hut, he saw that the old man, the hermit, was digging the ground in front of his hut. Digging means he was preparing the flower bed to plant trees. He saw that old man was doing work. He greeted the king and continued digging. When this old hermit saw the king, he greeted him. He greeted the man and continued digging and continued his work. What was his work? He was preparing flower bed. He was preparing flower beds for plants. Look at the flower beds. He was preparing when the king visited there. The hermit was old and weak, and as he worked, he breathed heavily. This hermit was an old man, and he was weak also. As he worked, he breathed heavily. He was breathing heavily. He felt difficulty to continue his work when the king reached there. The king saw this condition of the hermit. The king went up to the hermit and said, "We know the king visited there to get the answers of his 3 questions." So the king went up to the hermit and said, "I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you to answer 3 questions." He introduced the intention of his visit there. He said he had come to him, the wise hermit, to ask him about the answers of 3 questions. The answers of 3 questions. We know the 3 questions. The 3 questions are, first one, what is the right time? What is the right time to begin something? And the second question was, which people should he listen to? And the third question was, what are the important things for him to do? So who are the people I need most? Look at the questions. He asked in a different way. First one, how can I learn to do the right thing at the right time? He wanted to do a right thing at the right time. He asked that question. Then second question, who are the people I need most? Which people should he consult with? The same question he asked in a different way. Who are the people I need most? And the third one is, what affairs are the most important? Which means, what are the important things for him to do? These 3 questions he asked the hermit. The hermit listened to the king, but did not speak. The hermit was a wise man, He did not speak anything. He listened to the king and kept quiet, kept silent. He did not answer. Now the hermit was not ready to give any answer to these three queries. These three queries of the king. He went on digging. Instead of giving any answer, the hermit continued his digging. Went on means continued. Continued his work. "You are tired," said the king. Then the king noticed the old man, the hermit, and said, "You are tired. Let me take the spade and work in your place. Give me the spade. I will dig the flower bed for you." Who said? The king. The king promised to work for the hermit. He asked for the spade. Spade here means this instrument with which the hermit was preparing the flower bed. So he wanted to take that spade and work for the hermit, the old man, because he was so weak and tired. So the king promised to work for him. "Thanks," said the hermit, giving the king his spade. When the hermit heard this suggestion, he felt relief and he thanked the man, thanked the king, and gave him the spade. Then he sat down on the ground. The hermit sat down and took rest. He let the king to do the work in the place of him. When the king had dug 2 beds, he stopped and repeated his questions. When the king completed 2 flower beds, 2 beds, look at the flower beds. This is the flower beds where little plants are planted. He stopped and repeated his question. After completing 2 flower beds, the king repeated his questions. The hermit gave no answer. But the hermit was not ready to give any answer. He kept quiet. He did not give any answer, but stood up. Instead of giving any answer, the hermit stood up from his resting place and stretching out his hand. Stretching out means he stretched out his hand for the spade. "Now you rest and let me work. Now you take rest and let me work." Who said? The hermit. The hermit wanted the king to take rest and let him do the rest of the work. But the king did not give him the spade and continued to dig. But the king realized that this man was so old and he could not do or he could not complete the work, or it was not fair to make him do the work just in front of him because he was so healthy and young. To allow that old man work in front of him, he said he felt certain humiliation. He felt certain sorry. So he never gave the spade to the old man and continued the work. 1 hour passed, then another. Then time passed, hour by hour. The sun went down behind the trees. It was the time of sunset, and at last the king stuck the spade into the ground and said, At last the king stuck the spade into the ground and said, He stopped his work and asked once again, I came to you, wise man, for an answer to my questions. I actually visited here to get answers for my queries. The king said, If you can give me no answer, tell me so. If you are unable to answer these 3 questions, please tell me so, and I will return home. I have no problem to go back to my home. If you don't know the answer, tell me politely. Tell me openly, frankly, you can tell that, and I will go home. Here comes someone running, said the hermit. Then immediately the hermit noticed a man coming towards his hut. A man running towards his hut. He commented on it. Here comes someone running, said the hermit. This is the first part of the lesson. 3 questions. Now we can check the comprehension check. Now let us check the comprehension check. First question. Why did the king want to know answers to 3 questions? That we have already discussed. The king wanted to avoid failure in life. So he wanted to know the answers of these 3 questions. Second question. Messages were sent throughout the kingdom. 4 options are given here: to fetch wise men, to find answers to the questions, to look for the wise hermit, to announce a reward for those who could answer the questions. Mark your answer. Which one out of these 4 options is the right one? To announce a reward for those who could answer the 3 questions is the answer. Now you have to answer these questions after reading the textbook. We call it question time. First question. What are the 3 questions the king wanted to know their answers? Second question. What are the 4 different answers for the first question? 4 different answers that you have to find out from the text and write. Third question. Did the king satisfy with the answers? Why or why not? Fourth question. What are the replies to the second questions? For the second question also, the king got 4 replies. Answer those 4 replies here. Question number 5. What were the suggestions the king got for his third query? What suggestions, what answers he got for the third query? He got 3 answers. Write down all those 3 answers. Then last question. What would the king consider if he knew the answers of the 3 things? This question also you have to answer. If you like the video, don't forget to thumbs up and share this video with your friends. Thank you for watching till the end. And subscribe the channel if you want to get more such Cbse related materials. Thank you.